Hello everyone, welcome to this live instructor chat on the Hoof Falls and Foot Falls Facebook page. This is where I go live a lot of times to talk about industry hot topics or frequent topics that impact adaptive and therapeutic riding instructors, also traditional riding instructors as well, because a lot of it crosses over from traditional to the adaptive world. If you're listening on a replay, you might be listening to this on YouTube or a podcast stream, but just know that a lot of times I go live on Facebook. So follow Hoof Falls and Foot Falls on Facebook. Make sure you like and follow so that you get notifications when I go live and when I also post special topics and tag some followers if it's something that you guys might be interested in. So today's live instructor chat is about kind of in the theme of creating healthy boundaries. I had shared a post a few days ago from another instructor in the industry about creating and setting healthy boundaries and how that can really help us maintain our sanity. And also a lot of the problems that we find ourselves in as instructors are actually our fault at the root of it because we haven't created and set healthy boundaries and maintain those. So one of the things that we need to do as instructors is to realize that we need to create and set healthy boundaries around things like credit policies, cancellations, lesson makeups, no show, no calls, late arrivals, payments, all of that. That seems to be a very big piece in the instructor industry, whether it's traditional or equine assisted services, so adaptive and therapeutic riding fall under there, that really can factor into instructor burnout. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the importance of being proactive in setting your policies as it relates to payments and credits and no-shows and makeup and all of that as it relates to your students coming into your lesson program. My policy right now is a 2/3, 1/3 rule, and I'll share what that is at the end, but I'm also going to share kind of the evolution of my cancellation and makeup and payment policies over the years, and that is so that hopefully you guys don't make the same mistakes I have made in the past. So I'm helping you guys be proactive because hopefully you have never experienced some of the situations I've encountered more than once, but this maybe will put something in your mind to set you up for success so that you never encounter this situation like I have, and I know several other instructors have also encountered situations like I have brought up. So like I mentioned, my makeup and cancellation policy and payments and all of that is the 2/3, 1/3 rule. Details will come at the end. But just a little background about me. I worked for almost a decade at a large therapeutic riding center here in the state that I live in. And when I was first there, we started out with a little bit more relaxed credit policy, makeup policy, cancellation policy. And as that center grew, we had to tighten things up for the sake of our instructors, our volunteers, and also finances. That is something that even if you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, that's something that you need to consider when you are formatting your policies, okay? So I had already gone through all of the heartburn of students calling out with advance notice given. They did give advance notice. They were late arrivals, they were paying late or maybe not at all, and then they disappeared. And so at the larger center, we tidied up and went to a no makeup and no credit policy unless the center had canceled due to like an instructor illness or a weather related cancellation. And that worked great at a large center. So you would think that I would have learned my lesson as an instructor of being more strict and setting myself up for success when I eventually broke off on my own and started up a smaller program at my own property. so that I could be home with my kids. And I was thinking, oh, I might need to cancel on my end because, what if my kids are sick and it'll just be me? I'm going to have a smaller student base, so it's okay. I'll be more flexible. Well, I didn't learn from my lessons before at the previous center. And so originally starting out, I started off way too flexible. Again, that is that yes person in me. I don't like conflict. I don't like saying no. Boundaries are hard for me to put in place and keep in place. That is something I've gotten better with over the years. Let me know if you are also like that as an instructor. I'd love to hear that from you. But I started off lax because I was thinking, okay, well, it's just a small handful of students. I want flexibility on my end if my kids are sick, so therefore I'm going to extend it and be flexible on the other end. Now, I was assuming that other people were going to value my time as much as I valued my own time, and also how like I'm a very conscientious type person, so like if I cancel on somebody, that takes a lot for me to cancel. Like I don't just do it lightly, and I assume that everybody else is that way, which not everybody is, and that's okay because everybody else has different character traits and all of that. So I was assuming that, okay, these people are going to value my time, they're not going to cancel unless they absolutely have to, and they're going to act like I would in that situation, which was a wrong assumption, like I had already previously experienced the last decade of working at a larger program, okay? So I went in with that mindset of assuming that other people would not kind of push the boundary of being kind of flippant with cancellations. So I was that flexible piece. And also kind of on human nature, if we know something is going to be flexible and there's not really a consequence to it, whether it's removal from a program or you lose financially or you lose, progress is kind of hard for people to like invest into. But, when there's something where you kind of feel the sting of losing that time and that investment and it's, not flexible, then it's going to be something that we are less likely to cancel on. But if we know something is flexible and there is not much negative consequence to us, we're going to keep that thing as that flexible item, and everything else is going to stay in place. So if we are always the flexible activity and we allow that to happen because of our boundaries and our rules and our policies that we set, we can't blame that on the families that are participating with us. But if we allow our programs to be the flexible thing, the flexible activity, we are going to be treated that way because that's what we've allowed. And we can't get upset with people for treating our programs that way. So, early on, I had allowed that 24-hour, okay, if you let me know 24 hours in advance, you won't get charged. I used to charge at the end of the month so that I wouldn't have to worry about like credits for the next month and all of that. I also said that we could do makeup lessons. And then what happened there is I ended up working on the days and times that I was supposed to be off and with my family and also doing other business or work obligations. Those got pushed out of the way because I was trying to prioritize the makeups. So I had a makeup policy. I had the 24-hour advance notice policy. Now, given these families were great about giving me 24 hours advance notice, but it was getting to where it was almost half of the lessons were getting canceled in a month because they knew they wouldn't get charged if there was at least a heads up notice. So then that wasn't working. So then I tried okay, you get one 24-hour cancellation or makeup in a month. Then I went to like a session, which is 6 to 8 weeks. And guess what? Almost everybody did end up utilizing that makeup lesson or that credit. And it was hard to track, took a lot of my time and effort. I had to kind of budget in that I was going to lose at least a paid lesson for all of my students, which that adds up quite a bit. So budget-wise, that was impacting my program. And so that again was just getting to where it was just not sustainable. And I was getting frustrated because families were, well, we didn't cancel this last month, but we need to cancel twice this month. So can we take the cancellation for this one and this one? And there was like all this negotiation, and it kind of got complicated. And again, I allowed it because of the boundaries and policies I had set initially. So then I reassessed everything and realized that I was trying really hard to keep everybody happy, but at the sake of being overly flexible and trying to make everyone happy, that there was starting to be a decrease in my happiness running the program, which then impacts quality of the lessons. And also the happiness of the students and their families, because there felt like there was kind of this negotiation room in the policies at that time. And I would love to hear from you guys what your guys' current policies are right now at your program in regards to credits, cancellations, makeups. Do you have your students pay up front? Do they pay after? And then also, is there any heartburn you have about those policies, or are they working great for you? Because that's always interesting to hear from instructors. So what are your guys' policies at this time? Are they working good? Have you experienced any negative consequences of certain policies? And if so, like, what would you change and how would you change it? So going back to that, I sat down again. I was like, well, I'm a small program. Do I really have to go back and be as strict as I was when I was at the larger program and we had to set this more strict policy? And yes, I totally should have set myself up for success. I should have learned from my past mistakes. Should have learned, again, it's human nature. Again, cannot get upset with people for just taking advantage of the options that are given to them, okay? So what I ended up doing at the beginning of a ride year, so I didn't implement this mid-year. I was, kind of tactical about how I implemented policies and rolled them out and everything to hopefully decrease the frustration from families that were already enrolled. And we were mid-year, and when a big change happens, that doesn't go over well. So I was tactical about how I implemented it. And honestly, I was worried I was going to lose a bulk of my students because I was getting really strict and not that anyone called me mean, but I felt like I was being mean on my non-negotiation of what my policy was going to be, this new 2/3, 1/3 rule. But the year I had decided that I needed to change stuff, I think it was the year after COVID. Everything was back in full swing. I had a full waiting list of students. So it was okay, you know what? If somebody doesn't like the new policy, it's okay. I've got students to pull from. This is how my program needs to work, and it's fair. And also other activities like my kids' piano, other sports, all of that, they function the same way. So I took a big breath, wrote down some new policies, and after that year of COVID, when I had a bunch of cancellations, a lot of flexibility, everybody had filled up their time with extra activities, and I had been not purposely taken advantage of it being that flexible activity. I really redid stuff that summer and went back to the policies that I knew had worked. And I have an old video on actually how we decreased a $7,000 loss at the other program that I had been in, and that's before inflation, by just tidying up our policies and setting the center and the students up for success. So my new policy, which I've had in place for a while, but one that I try to share as much as I can, is the 2/3, 1/3 rule. And what I mean by that is that I ask for families, or my participants, they pay for 1/3 of the reasons that could cancel a lesson. So they pay for 1/3 of the things that could impact lesson attendance or making it up, and that's their life. So they pay for their life. So It doesn't matter if they are sick, if they are out of town, if the student wants to go spend a night at a friend's house instead of attending lessons, or if they woke up that day and they're just tired, that's their choice. So they pay for their life decisions. Yes, in extreme circumstances, I have given a credit for like if someone's family was in a bad accident or something like that, but that's rare, okay? And I don't do that a lot. So they pay for the 1/3. They are paying for their life and their choices and their consequences of those choices. And they don't get credit. They don't get a makeup lesson. What they're paying for is their spot in my program. So that's kind of the new wording that I have put into place is you're not paying for the lesson, you are paying for a spot in my schedule, whether or not you choose to show up. And I understand sickness happens, travel happens, but I also publish my calendar a year in advance and show my off weeks so that if families really don't want to miss out on that lesson fee, they could plan their activities and their outings around that commitment that they have to the lessons, okay? The 2/3 is actually, I pay for 2/3 of things that could impact lessons. So 1/3 would be my life. I'm sick, my kids are sick, something happens with a horse, and I also, like, the student for some reason isn't suitable for like a ground unmounted type lesson, something along those lines. That's that 1/3. And then the other 1/3 that makes up the 2/3 is like a crazy active nature or something beyond my control. I will pay for those. So I pay for my life, I pay for crazy situations, they pay for their life. So that's a pretty darn fair trade-off if we look at kind of the weight of what could impact our lessons. I also have kind of a sub-policy within there that if I cancel a lesson, if a lesson, a riding lesson outside is canceled due to weather, but I offer an alternative lesson that is suitable to that student, and the family declines because they don't want to drive out or whatever it is, as long as roads aren't flooded and it's not unsafe, but they just don't feel like coming out that day because it's not riding, they're choosing then to lose that lesson fee because they're choosing to cancel even though I have an appropriate unmounted lesson plan available for that student. Yes, there are a couple students that we do cancel and I credit to the following month, but that's far and few between because a lot of the students, they can still benefit from unmounted lessons. So that's my rule. I have also moved strictly to prepay. So my students pay month by month. I don't ask for like a session of like 6 to 8 weeks. At a larger program, you might want to consider that because that does help with billing and the time and effort that it takes to bill. But I bill by month, and then if something happens, we roll that credit over to the following month. So I get sick or weather cancellation or whatever that might be, I have clear documentation of it. I don't try to do makeups. And I have to hold myself to it because it's like, oh, I could probably squeeze in a makeup this month, and even though I was sick that day, but then that opens up the door of them seeing that you might be open and flexible for other days, which then there could be a whole cascade effect on your scheduling. And again, boundaries get a little fuzzy then around your availability when you're home, all of that, okay? So that is my meanie pants rule of the 2/3, 1/3. So no credits, no makeups, paying in advance for the families that are part of the program. They're paying for their place in my program. If that is not a good fit for them, then that's okay. Go to a different program. But a lot of equine programs are starting to kind of go this route. I don't want the hassle of keeping track of like one cancellation a month. And also know too that even if you have that advanced 24-hour rule, and even if you put more like strict things in advance of like, well, you have to be sick and give me 24 hours advance. One, if you're really, really sick and you're missing a lesson, it probably came on maybe a little bit, within or less than 24 hours. But also the families are going to know what that keyword is that's going to get them that credit, and they might be untruthful about that. That's not the majority. The majority are truthful, but just know that that can be human nature if they know what that keyword is to get the credit or that financial, limit the financial loss, okay? And the prepayments, I have more than once experienced people that had reasons why they were unable to pay. They didn't pay, and then they disappeared. Blocked my phone number, blocked my email, all of that. So that, again, is not the majority, but when it's a good chunk of income, especially if you're a smaller program and you only have, room for 10, 12, 15 students, losing out on that could be, something that is maybe your ability to make an investment into a new saddle or a new bridle or whatever it might be, or paying that instructor that was supposed to teach that lesson, okay? So make sure that you guys have I would suggest a prepayment rule. I would also really advocate for you guys setting at least a month commitment, if not like a session, so 6 to 8 weeks for your students. That is going to decrease the stress of scheduling. That is going to help your volunteers too, and your volunteer retention and your instructor retention, because you at least know what the plan is for a month. I actually pretty much plan September through May, and it's pretty rare that I have students move within that time frame. We have set days and times pretty much for that whole time of year. When we break for winter break, Christmas break, that's kind of our time to move around unless it's an absolute emergency. So I'd highly, highly recommend that you guys also lock people into a day and time, because again, if they know that you can easily, I know it takes a lot of work on our end, it looks like it's easy to move days and times with them. Again, you're going to be that flexible activity, and you know what, soccer can't move, but horses can move, so let's ask for a third or a fourth time this year to ask our instructor to move the day and the time, because it's just not convenient to us. But they don't see the big picture of what we do, of having to match the tack and the horses and your volunteer scheduling and your scheduling of instructors. So you guys are responsible for setting that boundary of how frequent you allow reschedules, and that can create a culture of higher committed students, which then in turn you're going to see much better progression and retention of your students, because they don't see that changing days and times or constantly canceling, even though they give you at least 24 hours notice, that impacts their progression. They think that because they're in the program, a lot of people kind of just assume, well, I'm showing up for lessons, why am I not progressing? And they don't see that, well, you canceled 50% of your lessons this month. We only have 4 lessons. You only rode twice. You rode the first week and then the last week, and you skipped the 2 in between. There's not going to be much progression realistically. So having a more strict cancellation credit, that financial investment from the families, is also going to help your student progression, student retention. And also, you might have heard, if you listen to like business podcasts or business educational videos, knowing your ideal client or knowing your ideal student. I know we're not supposed to use client in our world because it comes off as therapy, but knowing who your ideal student is also really helps to build that culture of what you want your program to look like and run like. And you might find someone say, hey, you know what, I need to be able to pay week to week, and I need the availability to cancel, and I don't want to pay for it. It's okay if you say, you know what, I'm just not a good fit then, but here's some other people you can reach out to. It's okay to say that. It's okay to have an ideal client. And in the long run, it will really, really help with retention of volunteers, with students, your sanity, your time, all of that. Also, if you implement a stricter pay upfront policy and also a stricter cancellation and makeup policy, you can also pay your instructors who have committed to come out on that day and that time, even if all the students cancel. It's not quite as common anymore, but I do know of instructors that if their students cancel, because that program has a 24-hour advance cancellation and then you don't have to pay policy, those instructors don't get paid. So that can be really challenging, because if they're taking the time out of their day to reserve that time and their energy to show up for this lesson, and then their students cancel and they don't get paid, that is hard on instructor retention. Ethically, I don't know if that's really a great decision either, business practice wise, but that's a whole nother can of worms. So just be aware of that. Late arrivals. Somebody also asked me about late arrivals when I had put this discussion up. Late arrivals, I do have the policy of if you are half past the start time of your lesson, I might put the horse away, especially if I haven't heard from you, or we don't ride if it's a mounted lesson, and we might do grooming or something along those lines. And also, if you are late, that doesn't mean that your lesson time ends later. Even if I have open time after, your lesson time ends at the scheduled ending time. So the late arrival rule, and I like get into teaching and I'll run over sometimes, and I have to be really careful that I don't get in that trend of doing that. But we need to be good about our time management so that applies to all of our students. It sets us up for success, and it's just consistent across the board. So let's see. One of the instructors here on the live said that they bill in advance. Families can pay through the term, and only credits are for medical hospitalization rules, or if they cancel for any reason. Yeah, so it sounds like they have a very similar 2/3, 1/3 rule. I'd love to hear from you guys on any other cancellation makeup policies that you guys have. Let me know if you have any questions after you have either watched this live or on a replay. I'd love to discuss it. But hopefully this just really encourages you guys, no matter what size of program you are, no matter if you're a larger program or a smaller program where you think, no, it's okay. It's just a handful of students. I can be more flexible. For your sanity, for your longevity in this industry, and hopefully avoiding burnout, make sure you are proactive about setting positive, fair, but consistent boundaries. And one of those ways that we can do it is through our makeup credit payment policies. So hopefully it maybe gives you encouragement to either reassess your policies and set yourself up for success the next time you start up a new ride year. Again, be tactical in how you implement this and roll it out to help minimize student frustration and family frustration. Don't just spring it on them all of a sudden. It does take some practice and tact in doing it. But I hope this encourages you guys to, as instructors, know that your time is valuable. Also know, though, that we can't expect others to value our time or be as conscientious about cancellations as we might be, especially if we are instructors that are kind of that yes person and are very conscientious. I'm blanking on the word, but that we feel a lot for other people, and we are very considerate of what other people think in their time. We have to be careful that we don't assume that people are going to automatically do that for us. That is our responsibility to put those boundaries in place to help make us successful and our programs successful. And finance-wise, even if you are a nonprofit, it is going to benefit your program horses, your TAC and your equipment, your instructor retention, all of that, the resources of people who have donated to your program to help offset the costs of those lessons that people are attending. A stricter cancellation makeup credit policy is going to help you financially as well. And calculate it out. Even if a student cancels once a month, what happens financially? So yeah, just weigh out all the factors. If you have questions about how to do it, or Are you going to lose clients or students or whatever it might be? Feel free to comment. I'd love to chat about it. But hopefully this encourages you to maybe tidy up a policy, set yourself up for success, be proactive instead of reactive. Or if you already have a strict policy and you've been called a meanie pants for having a strict policy, hopefully this is encouragement that it is just someone pushing the boundary that you have chosen to set. That's actually probably a healthy boundary for your program. And I wouldn't say probably, it is. It's a good business practice. It's a good boundary. It's fair. And I don't know why in the equine industry that we are expected to be flexible and other activities have these stricter rules. So I don't know. So let's kind of change that trend and let's be upfront about our policies and set ourselves up, our volunteers, our horses, our students, and other instructors that might be underneath us up for success by revisiting our policies as it relates to makeups, credits, late arrivals, prepaying, all of that. So thank you to those that joined in live. If you are listening on a replay, let me know what you thought about this live presentation. If you also have another topic that you would like me to cover as it relates to adaptive or therapeutic riding instructors, you can definitely leave it in the comments here, and I will usually get notifications and I'll see it, but I love to get prompts for things that you guys as fellow instructors want to hear about. And if you don't feel comfortable putting it in the chat, you can also private message me, and it can be an anonymous topic if you would like me to address that. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are at. Thank you guys for tuning in live or listening on a replay. Remember to like and follow Hoof Falls and Footfalls on Facebook, YouTube. Jump on my email newsletter, hooffallsandfootfalls.com. And thank you guys for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it.